Hello, everyone. Thank you for being so patient. And every time I do this, I feel like I'm brand new going live. So anyways, here we are on the Ascension Roundtables, and we are talking about our multidimensional self. We're talking about past lives, which really, in actuality, they're all happening now. But we're talking about what happens when you connect to different aspects of yourself, and whether you say it's a past life or another life, it matters not, but how that impacts. And the reason why I wanted to bring this subject is because it is really part of the ascension. And so if you can listen to this conversation, so when it happens to you, you can embrace it instead of saying, did I make that up? I don't know. So that's why. So, okay, we're going to go around to our panelists. Nikki, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Isabel. Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here with everybody. So my name's Nikki Foure. I'm an energy therapist. I'm an ascension teacher, and I'm on this ascension journey, navigating this reality, and to the best of my ability, moving from fear to love. On to you, Max.
Yes, hi everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us. So I'm working on wealth and bringing everyone's wealth, abundance in the awareness, and and everything that is channeling and helping, healing, all the thing. So next is Kimberley.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kimberley. I'm a channel. I'm a counselor. I'm a light language alchemist and spiritual ascension teacher and Reiki therapist. So I'm doing a lot of things. And I assist people to move from transmute their inner shadows to remember who they are. So I teach the ascension teachings, and it's a process of basically remembering your enlightened state, because we are all enlightened beings. We have just forgotten. So just like the layers of the onion, we're just here to go through basically stages of unlearning, to unlearn our limiting beliefs, to remember the truth of who we are, that we are oneness, that we are love, that we are source. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm just going to start with my personal experience. I learned how to do hypnosis. And of course, when you're learning, you practice on students. And the first time I was hypnotized, I went into Atlantis, and it was amazing. One of the first things I was struck by was my feelings for it and how I kind of saw it. And so it's not like I can see my hand with my human eyes. It was more of a download of information. So it was like, okay, if I asked you guys, can you remember your favorite Halloween costume, or a favorite outfit in case you don't have Halloween, or a favorite, a favorite outfit? You can recall. So you can recall the color. You can recall your what you wore, how you felt, that kind of thing. It's like a memory. So when you're under hypnosis, you can. It's like you're recalling. And so when I saw Atlantis, what was so interesting around that, it was the city was so vibrant. It kind of, I said, oh, it's almost like the Emerald City of the Wizard of Oz. It glowed, it pulsated. It was made out of crystal. It was so interesting. And then I knew something. I knew there was a vineyard in the town, and my Isabelle human mind would think that you would grow your wine outside of your city. but there was a vineyard inside the city, and it was actually Kimberly who channels Lakishma. I asked Lakishma, not that Kimberly knew, I kept that quiet, but I asked Lakishma in Atlantis, did they have a vineyard inside the city? And she said, yes, they did. So it was, I didn't know that, but because I went into that life, I had seen it, and I was a teacher in that life. And then in my sessions, or my personal session, I cried. And again, if it was just me making it up, I wouldn't cry. Okay, so how did visiting Atlantis help me in this life? Because when we are shown different aspects of ourselves, it's to understand this life. And I think it made me realize that I have been a man, I have been a woman, I've had other families, I have a family in this life. And I could feel my energy in that life as a man in Atlantis as a teacher to this life as Isabelle in this current time as an Ascension teacher. Not that I was an Ascension teacher when I was learning the technique, but it prepared me, if that makes sense. So I'm going to open it up to our panelists to share their perspective around knowing different aspects within themselves. Who would like to jump in?
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
How did it feel to recognize Atlantis? How did it feel?
So I actually cried. I saw my beautiful wife and my 2 children. And then I saw my Arcturian friends. And I cried at that moment because I missed my Arcturian friends. And I missed being in Atlantis. I missed, you know, the soaring buildings, the light, the cohesiveness, the vibrancy of the humans and aliens living in Atlantis. And I missed, you know, as a teacher there, we would teach our children psychic ability at age 2. We worked on it like how we teach our children how to talk and eat and walk. We worked on psychic ability alongside a physicality. And it was the greatest feeling. And then when my inner being came through and said, this is where humanity is heading, bringing forth modern day Atlantis. Again, not Atlantis of that time, but a new iteration of Atlantis. It was great. I was so glad I was able to see and walk through the city in my session.
For me, recognizing Atlantis, so being there, I see myself in Atlantis, and I can see a figure, many figures, female figures. Atlantis was a matriarchy, so women were, well, what men are right now, right? So it was in the other side. So women were more strong, more right. It was completely different. And I have this, but the feeling I have, because Atlantis for me goes into the feeling. So I feel myself there. So I feel the self that is there, and the feeling I have is a feeling of missing it, obviously, because I have a feeling so quiet, of peacefulness and of tranquility, that is strange to have compared to our situation right now. It was so it's completely different, and I can recognize that those figures that I see there surrounding me are figures that I am in right now interacting with. So it's such a feeling of missing that, but also a feeling of such love and kindness and yes, and right, of still being experiencing it.
Yeah, I can really relate. And you know, what's interesting, I meet so many humans who are from Atlantis. And then recently I had gone to a crystal shop and she says, "Oh, I'm Lemurian." And I said, "Hi, I'm so happy to meet you because I have so much in my energy field Atlantinian." And so it was so nice to meet a Lemurian. And I felt such love. So I did not know this woman, but when we started talking, I started to tear up. I was so emotional that I met a fellow Lemurian. And I meet a lot of Atlantinian friends now in this time. And I'm just so grateful. But you're right, the divine feminine was very balanced and celebrated. And also I've done sessions where we go to Atlantis, and it was so interesting. Here I am in a session. She's in a life in Atlantis, and she's going to a temple to talk to her inner being. She talks to her inner being in the session to receive the higher perspective while she's under hypnosis, while we're in Atlantis. And it was so surreal, but it was so interesting. And then I realized when we were in Atlantis, we would go within to our inner being. And that was just normal. That was like normal, like getting a cup of coffee at Starbucks now. You know, it was just so natural, you know. And here we are telling humans like, "Oh, you should meditate, you should go within, there's an inner being." And they're like, "What do you mean I have an inner being? What do you mean I need to meditate?" You know, it's just so funny to be in a society that was at that level, like complete acceptance, you know. So I'm so grateful. And because I saw my Arcturian friends, and that's really when I saw it. And I was kind of surprised while I was under, and I was really crying, and I was very emotional, and I felt this longing, this like I miss my best friend, like just tremendously. When the Arcturians, and again, Kimberly channeled this. So Kimberly didn't know Auroral, an Arcturian entity, had contacted me. And then the following week, Kimberly was channeling the Arcturians. And I know I always do this to Kimberly, but I didn't tell Kimberly that I was contacted by an Arcturian. And sure enough, she had validated. When she was channeling, they had validated, "Isabelle, you know." And the Arcturians have very advanced technology. And but because I felt the missing the Arcturians, it prepared me to allow to channel and connect with an Arcturian. So I'm grateful for being put under, to be honest with you, because it allowed me to be open to communicate with an Arcturian.
Hey, I've got a question for you, Isabelle. So I also was witness to an experience you had when I did the timeline exercise with you, and let's just say I led you on some sort of hypnotherapy. It was a hypnotic trance sort of thing, and
Totally.
you went into another timeline where there was a lot of grief, okay, because you had exposure to a lifetime where there was great loss. I'm not going to give all the details because that's not for me to give. However, so you mentioned earlier, I was I teared up because I was like, I had missed my Arcturian friends, and life was so, it was so, the vibration was so much higher in Atlantis, apparently, right? And so my question to you is, so you had these glimpses, these experiences, you connected with these aliens and with the version of you at that time. So how is that beneficial on your own ascension path as a human experiencing a reality full of, like, let's just say, denser energies? How do you live that knowing what you've had in the past?
Yeah, so a couple of things I just want to say. Nikki is an amazing therapist. I am so grateful for her to put me under a trance. That timeline exercise blew my socks off, if I can say that colloquial saying. And I was stunned. And Nikki also channels, and she was really channeling Asana, her inner being, assisting, which is Nikki, by the way. So in that session, something deep inside of me, Madeline, my daughter, came running down the stairs because she never heard me in anguish. I was literally in anguish, and I felt like my heart was ripped out of my chest. It was intense. It was anguish. It was beyond grief. It was anguish. And it was what had prompted this was I watch a lot of science videos, and there was a scientist, the Royal Institute, it's on YouTube, and there was Chris French, a scientist, and he was basically very methodically and logically disproving psychic ability. And my heart felt like it was broken or ripped. And then when, so I was talking to Nikki, and because Nikki's like, oh, Isabelle, what's going on with you? And I told her, and I said, gosh, I said, I'm so upset. Chris French looks like an amazing scientist, and he's telling humans that the non-physical beings don't exist, and we're not, like all this stuff. And I was really upset by it. So she did the timeline exercise, and I got the understanding that Chris French is necessary because humans can't go into the unknown. So he's really moving them from fear into love. So his perspective of the non-physical not existing is perfect. And then when she put me in the timelines, I understood why I was so upset, because I felt like entities had turned their back to themselves, their own inner being, and they felt like lost children for me. And so I felt great despair and anguish, and that had to be released within me. So I had to come to the greater understanding that nothing is lost, and it's okay for humans to turn their back on their own power and their own inner being and their own psychic ability. It's okay. They're not lost. It's their exploration. And so Nikki really helped me heal that tremendously. So I just had to tell everyone that. Okay, so going back to your question, so how does that help me now? Well, so because I accepted and had an understanding that if somebody doesn't believe this, I no longer feel hurt. I no longer feel pain. I am no longer judging you as wrong. It's okay. It doesn't matter what I believe, it matters what you believe. And you are perfect, whatever you believe. And now I feel that. Now I'm not just saying that intellectually, I feel that in my heart. So I think it's made me freer, Nikki.
Can I say something like that?
Yeah.
Because we had we had a regression together, and there was one of the lives that came through for me. It was a motherly figure living in Papua New Guinea. Well, of all the countries in the world, one of the most remoted. But that figure of that woman, with all her children and all her dedication to those children. By the way, some of those children I know now that I have a relationship with, or have met them, even probably in this panel. But for me, having that encounter, discovering that, made me realize one thing, and that is that I don't have to be feeling missing something, or that I will not realize something, or that I need to do something absolutely in this life, because it's happening anywhere, anyway. In other lives, and those others' lives, we call them other lives, but they are not really other lives. They are our lives as well. So we are living them, even though we're not experiencing them, because we are not, right? We are in other moments, in other realities, or whatever we want to talk with about them. But the thing is that there is no way of having that feeling of having not enough time to realize everything, or you become just much more connected with the now.
Yeah. So understanding that, having that experience of being regressed, you've now deepened your understanding of now.
Yes.
And that's priceless. Now, I just want to say to everyone, Kimberly and Nikki and you, Max, have all received aspects of themselves, or understanding of themselves. Nikki was in a gong bath. Kimberly, it happens to you all the time. You go into parallel timelines. Max, you're going to have to share with the audience, Chris from Ohio.
Yes.
Yeah. So go ahead and talk a little bit about Chris. I think Nikki and Kimberly will find it fascinating, and the symbolism, how the soul chooses so many same symbolism.
Yes, so Chris is what we will call as my previous incarnation, right? Now, time doesn't, so it's not previous, it's happening right now, but okay, we're human, so let's talk human. So my previous incarnation, it's exactly the one that happens before. So born in 1951, died in 1972, born in Ohio, Ravenna. So I know a lot about him because I've discovered a lot about him. So born in Ravenna, Ohio, in, as I said, 1951. He went to Vietnam to fight for the US in the war. And he actually didn't want to go. So he wanted to run away in Canada. Because he was scared of the war, and he absolutely didn't want to go, but he ended going because of his father. He wanted to give that to his father. He couldn't disappoint his father, right? And the figure of his country. So he went there, and he died in 72 in the war. So what I've discovered about this is the interesting part. So Chris his name is Christopher Howard Turk. So my name, family name is Turci, Turci. His family name is Turk, Turk. So it's literally, and literally it means the same thing. My name in Italian, his name in English mean the same thing. He was born, as I said, in Ravenna. Ravenna, the original Ravenna in our reality, which is in Italy, is just, 10, 20 miles away from the town I'm originally from. And so when 2 years ago, when I was first introduced to Chris, first I had the story from the Pleiadian. They told me about, there is this, you have this life where you died in Vietnam. They didn't give me names or anything. And so just a couple of days after, I don't remember how long after, but I was just wondering his name, and I just waking up, I hear the name Chris. So what I've done is that, knowing that he died in the Vietnam War, I went online on the internet, and I went visiting the wall of the Vietnam War in Washington DC. Where I could find, there was the Chris, so I check all the Chris, knowing the date. And actually, at first, I found another Chris from Florida, and I was okay. But the following day, I was still checking, and I found Chris, and I see his picture, and I knew this is the one. Right, that's the thing.
Yep.
The moment you know, there is no, right?
Yep.
And so I started that, but in that first moment where I had I took the picture of him. There is in the memorial, there is a picture. It's a very old picture. It's not that, but now when I watch it, I say, well, there is some likeness. It's right.
Yes.
And then the last thing, so the just recently I went checking again, and that's where I found out about Ravenna being his where he was born. But it doesn't end there, because I know that Isabelle is from Ohio too. So I was curious about that. So I went to check Isabelle, and I saw that Isabelle too, you're from, so the town is
Parma.
Yes, Parma, and Parma is in my region too. The original Parma is part of that area too. So I was okay. Again, as you said before, do you just take it saying, it's just a coincidence, it means nothing? And at first I was there, okay, don't do too much with it, just, and then I said, well, no, there are no coincidences in life, right?
That's right.
There is no such thing.
There is no coincidence. That's right.
And so I would say, well, there are, right? It's just a pile of so much together there, and I said, well, this is Chris, so I know a lot. I was able to bring back to discover a lot about that. And then Chris is also a personality, or a someone that can come through me, that I'm connecting with, especially in everything related to war and this kind of thing. Chris has his saying, right, to come through, and in my head sometimes I say, well, yeah, that's war.
Yeah, and I think he's helped you with war. So just so you know, Max's working through, he's been a slave, he's been abused of power, and in this life his mom squashed any power in Max. So when Max was exerting his power, his mom would smack it away. So also his name of his last name means man from Turkey. So
Yes.
Isn't that interesting? Chris Turk means man from Turkey, and Max's Turci, how do you say it?
Turci.
Turci also means man from Turkey. And isn't it interesting that Chris was born in the similar name where Max was born in Italy, Ohio in Italy, right? And so I channeled around this because I was just so darn curious. And I said, hey, why does the soul pick these similarities? And they're for clues. They're clues. And spirit communicates subtly, my friends. Symbols and images are very important. We are so literal. We are so visceral. We think A and B, but it's way more exciting than that.
And there's the last thing, as I was the other day, as I was watching these things, and there was the radio with a song, and the song was the Baghdad Cafe song. So and I had the thing, I'm calling you, and in repeat, right? I'm calling you. I'm calling you. I'm calling you. So, yes, I'm listening.
Yeah. So Chris
right?
was in contact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I know. All right, Kimberly, you've been awfully quiet. You got to jump in. So
yes.
She's got a really cool experience.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know where to start. I have so many experiences, but it's amazing, Max. The fact you are able to identify a face and like all those details, very recent. That's amazing because for me, they're all ancient. But in saying that, I have remembered a lot of parallel lives, but a lot of them go like what we call as very ancient past lives. So for me, it actually happened around 2008. This is when I was working as a spa therapist, and I was doing a lot of body work, like massages, and I was always taught to connect, right? And then I started seeing all these visions, right? Just, oh my goodness, it went for about a period of a week. I went through a stage of awakening, and some people might call this a Kundalini Awakening, but basically my third eye was like, for about a period of a week, I could feel like my third eye, like little ants going in my third eye, like the chakra ray, those of you who know Reiki. And then it felt like all these ants were crawling into my eyes and like going around my head. And I used to touch it, go, what is that? Has it got ants in my hair? And it's just energy. Anyway, I had all these visions of me being ancient Egypt. I would shake my head. I could feel the beads. And I even had a language come out of me. And I tried to put it on paper, but because it was a different language, I was like, okay, I don't know. It was a bit difficult to translate at the time. But anyway, what this showed me is that, it kind of alluded to my purpose at the time. I didn't know exactly, but I just saw myself as a healer, a person with power, the strong divine feminine within me. And, come 2008, I was kind of into spirituality. But then I got attuned to Reiki, and then I got a bit more into it. But then, life goes on, and I was kind of in and out, really focused on this kind of stuff. But it wasn't really until I started channeling about 5 years ago that, I went through another stage of I started to remember more of these past lives. So it was all the Egypt ones. It was interesting. And, Isabelle was talking about Lakeshma. That was my first remembrance. So it's kind of cool. And so basically Lakeshma was my mum in Atlantis. And those of you who follow me, Beings of Light with Kimberley, my YouTube channel, follow my work, I actually channel Lakeshma every month. She's Ascended Master from Atlantis. She was my mum, right? And I was Azrael, not Azrael, the angel of death. Azrael different. Just to let you know. But I was the keeper of the original Ascension teachings, right? I was the keeper of that, and how that related to me and this is, and if you have glimpses of your past life, this is what it shows you. It does. I mean, it doesn't always, but for me anyway, it does always relate to your current life. But it could be to do with soul contracts or things you wanted to explore in this life. So for me, they showed me this life to validate to me that, yes, I'm supposed to do this. I'm here for this, right? Because, of course, when I started channeling, I was kind of, going into self-doubt, as you might know, when you, and Isabelle had doubts as well. So when you experience a lot of mystical experiences, it's only natural for you to kind of have some doubts about, is this real? Is it my imagination? I went to the same thing. I thought I was going crazy because all of a sudden, like that 5 years ago, it's like a switch turned on. Like, even though I've always had contacts with the angels since I was an adolescent, this was like another level, right? And it was just like so many beings were coming to visit me. It was a bit overwhelming, right? And so basically Keshma came to me and told me my story, like why I'm here, and I'm here to teach the Ascension teachings once again. Hence, this is what I'm doing, right? So, and it was so cute that, and of course, again, you have the doubts. I'm like, this is my imagination. Because at the time I was kind of like, okay, this is cool, but it's so detailed. Like, am I imagining this? And Keshma visited Isabelle. And of course that helped to validate me that, okay, I'm not imagining things, right? So that was good. But, I've had so many experiences, and it's, and another one like to do with my soul contracts. And again, if you have glimpses of this, everybody has this. I mean, you might think it's your imagination, and actually when you sleep, right, wake up from your dream state, what we call as a dream state, you're actually visiting your other lives, right? And you might have this weird, maybe it's another timeline, maybe it's some ancient culture, and like, oh, that was interesting, but you visited one of your lives, right? So it commonly happens for most people, and I think, oh, it's just a dream, but you are visiting one of your lives here. I mean, because of what I'm meant to do in this lifetime, because of, I guess, my abilities, and because I was a teacher in many lives, I guess for me in this lifetime, I was able to more easily, I guess, remember a lot of my past lives. So that was because of my Pacific soul contract, but everyone has this ability. And what's interesting is that I, had a lot of remembrances too of ancient Egypt, and there was one, and this is actually one that I was under with Isabelle. So I've remembered a lot of my own like other lives outside of the Isabelle session, but this particular one was with Isabelle. And even though I had the knowing that I was in the mystery schools, like I did remember bits of it, this one was so detailed. And even though I was in the hypnosis state, I was able to put my hand up and do the anointment on the third eye. I was actually, and like because when you're in hypnosis, your body's really heavy. And I remember, do you remember that? I was like actually lifting my hand, and I was doing the anointment sign on the third eye. It was, so basically, again, have lots of lives. But I remembered another one that is actually very common to a lot of light workers. It's fear of persecution. So I was in another life. I won't go into details, but basically I was killed for who I am. I was killed for teaching the Ascension teaching. So again, basically all the lives I've remembered, I was a teacher of the Ascension teachings, right? I brought forth this wisdom from the stars about how the universe works, and teach people, right? This is how I've been in basically all the lives that I remembered. I was a teacher, and basically I was killed for it because the powers that be didn't want that, right? So, and that experience allowed me to, in this life, carry on a soul, what we call a soul contract, like pre-birth intentions. And this allowed me to have a fear of public speaking. So isn't that interesting? I'm here meant to be a teacher, yet I have a fear of public speaking.
That's perfect.
It's very common for light workers. So I know a lot of you who's watching this, you might have been, burnt on the stake as a witch, or, because if you're a light worker, if you have a calling to assist others, empower your life, empower others, then you were like working other lives, right? It might not be every life, but you would have had at least some lives, with this mission. So it's very common, this fear of persecution, and I was aware. So how funny is this, right? Knowing what I know, with the abilities that I know, right? I still imagine and I was still teaching, doing the YouTube, doing everything. And I still had fear of public speaking. And it was so interesting because I know it's an irrational fear and I know it relates to my soul contracts. Yeah, I still had it. And like, I'm doing this now, I'm doing everything that I'm doing. And from the information I received, I have completed that soul contract, well, at least that stage. You know, who knows in the future, maybe there's another stage will be activated. But what that means for you, those watching, is that, yes, we all have soul contracts, we all have fear, and how you overcome it is for you to push past the fear. So I was shit scared, sorry, but I remember when a friend of mine, when I started channeling, she goes, you should put it on YouTube. This is, more than 5 years ago. And I was like, no bloody way. I was like so scared, guys, so scared. At the time, I just had a Facebook group and there's no way I wanted to put things on YouTube. Anyway, I pushed past the fear and everything. When I receive information from non-physical messages, I push past the fear, and that's how you resolve. You learn, you expand from the soul contract. So from doing that, I expanded myself and I activated more of my purpose here. So that's how you overcome it. That's how you work through your soul contracts. And interestingly, just another thing I want to touch on is that part of what I do is higher self readings. And I've also done one with Isabelle. And when I do higher self readings, sometimes there's higher self aspects that come through, because I trans channel people's higher self aspects. They have also had a life on earth. So what that has taught me is that, we might think that our past lives are more advanced, right? But understand that we have aspects of our higher self that has lived also on earth too. And they're very, very wise beings. And these beings, because they get very detailed, they were your priests, your priestesses, your goddesses, your ascended masters. So I would say it's more than just, I guess, I wouldn't say random past life, right? But these lives, these higher self aspects, were elevated set of consciousness, right? And what's that shown me, and the details, like, it teaches me, it shows me, is that we have the potential to be at the same level in our conscious awareness of our higher self aspects. What the difference is that they had awareness of the universal laws, the laws of nature. They knew how to connect and engage with the energies of Earth, with Gaia, with the galaxy. They used the wisdom of where we live, and they were able to do that to empower themselves and their communities. So they had awareness, conscious awareness of this wisdom. So basically that's the only difference, guys. So if our higher self aspects can have this, and they lived on Earth, right? Not all higher self aspects, with more than one higher self aspect, FYI. But this has showed me that they're not like our higher self aspects. We think of them as like, they're so above us and they're so high. So we have that potential to embody that. It's just the difference is they have that remembrance of it. So that was a very, very fascinating thing. And it just shows you just how multidimensionally we are, how powerful we are. And another thing is, and like with the whole teaching thing, it's so funny. Like even when I did the session, when she put me under for her hypnosis, even in the regression I was teaching, like, I cannot help but teach. I was like, it's meant to be like for me, but no, she was putting me under. And even though there was no audience, I was like teaching as if others would be listening. I'm like, oh my goodness. So even in the regression, I'm teaching. It's like, I can't help it, right? But anyway, it just shows that with my experiences and my experiences with my clients, it just shows me, it basically just highlights that all this wisdom is within us. We've just forgotten. And all these lives we are living or have lived, the wisdom from these lives is accessed within us. So we might think, yes, it's, I guess in our linear thinking, we might think we're more advanced back then. And yes, I remember a few different lives of Atlantis. And what Lakeshma said as well, and actually I'm writing a book with Lakeshma as my mum. And of course she outs me in the book. Of course she does. She likes to talk about me, like about her daughter. Anyway, that's a side note. It's very cute. But she comes through to teach that, the first great awakening in Atlantis, when it was her time in Atlantis, it's a parallel of what is happening now. So that's what she comes through as. And she emphasizes, and other beings that I channel, is that even though like society might seem more advanced back then, like or technology, or because we're more advanced, but no, our vibration, who we are, is more advanced now. It's just we have forgotten. We just like the laws of the universe expands, so do we. So even though we might appear, like we might look in our surroundings, and this happened to me, right? I looked at my life, look at my conditions, I question myself, who am I to be a teacher? And you kind of judge your society and your life, right? And that's happened to me. And that's why Lakeshma kept pushing me who I was and telling me, all these stories to help elevate my perception of self-worth. Because yes, at the time I thought, who am I to be this kind of person, right? So basically, and my end point is, I know I like to talk a lot. Like I said, I can't help teaching, right? So the thing is like, who we are, so who you are, is the most advanced you've ever been. Yes, you might have had remembrances, like we call these golden ages of consciousness. We've entered that right now. And we might like to go to these places and go, we were so advanced there, but look at us, we're not advanced. But no, it's just an illusion. We are much more advanced here. You know why? Because we have imprints of all those lives within us, in our, the beings that I channel refer to it as our divine blueprint, which is kind of like a spiritual mainframe. It has imprints of all the lives we have lived and our abilities and wisdom. So basically, when we raise our frequency, we activate. That's how we remember. That's how we activate our remembrance. So, of course, doing the shadow work, you need to work on your limiting beliefs. But as you do that, you raise your vibration, you activate the knowings of your other lives and your abilities. So what this shows you is that you don't have, you have access to your other lives now. It's by raising your frequency when you activate that remembrance. And just be mindful, because sometimes you have a daydream, you have a glimpse, you have a resonance, right? And you might think it's your daydream, but you're peering to another dimension or another life. It happens to me all the time. I've talked, before on here, and it's like I brush my teeth and all of a sudden I'm seeing like a future life or parallel reality, or I'm having like a future conversation with Isabelle. Like, it happens to me all the time. But a lot of the time we kind of disregard it. We think it's our imagination. So it's just being mindful that the stimulus is happening all the time. Just being aware of our surroundings and knowing that the messages are always there. And if you can be in the present moment, you'll be able to be aware of this information, this wisdom. So yeah, bottom line is that you're very highly advanced. You've just forgotten. So all that wisdom of your other lives is basically, there's a thread that connects those lives to this life. So all those lives are helping you in this life. So it's about just being open. Yes, you have soul contracts, rebirth intentions, and that helps you to expand. And you might ask, okay, well, how do I know my past life? And how do I, ascend if I don't know my past lives? But look, make your intention before you go to sleep, make your intention to visit non-physical, to visit your other lives, and to remember them when you wake up. And if you do this, you'll start, your consciousness will allow you to remember more and more. So you can do this in your dream state. So that's probably the path of least resistance there, in your dream state. But yeah, it just shows that you are so highly powerful and highly advanced. You've just forgotten. It's just a journey here of remembering this and going through the stages of unlearning.
You know what? I just want to jump in. A lot of humans will go to a new place and it feels familiar. Or when Nikki and I met, there was such an intense connection. And when Kimberly and I met, there was another intense connection, and of course, Max, because now Max and I, we're so connected. Now, I haven't seen my life with Max. I know Kimberly was my mom in another life, and we've had so many lives, Kimberly and I, in Atlantis, in the mystery schools. And when I met Nikki, it was so weird. I kept on seeing like these men in black robes. And when she went under, Asana's like, oh, the scholars. And I remember being her sister with blonde hair, working with children. And Nikki's like, oh yeah, you were a governess. And I went, wow. And the mystery schools. So like, it's so interesting. So pay attention when you meet someone new and you feel they feel familiar, or pay attention when you go to some place you've never been, but it also feels familiar. These are clues. Don't discount it. Don't say, oh, that's how, I don't know. But if you accept it and say, oh, I think I had a life here, you're opening up your mind, you're opening up your heart so you can receive more information. Because if you push back, you're resisting. So how are you going to get more information when you say, no, I don't want that? So what about you, Nikki? Tell us about your experience with different aspects of you.
Well, before I do, I wanted to say a couple of things that came up while I was listening to the beautiful Kimberly, giving us all these rich treasures. Your shares are always so informative and entertaining too. Thank you, Kimberly. I was thinking about the people that are listening and that will listen who have never had these kind of experiences. And the first thing I wanted to say about it is that I remember when I was really in 3D and I was living in duality. Not that I'm on cloud 9. I still have contrast and resistance, but back then there was this notion that when I have this, or when I do that, or when I can experience that, then I've arrived, right? So I want to say that whether you ever experience a past life or you never experience a past life, it has nothing to do with how worthy you are. That's the first thing. And I would say that your now moment is the most important moment. And like Kimberly said, I was on the beach with Isabelle this summer, and I was having a little fantasy going on, and right, I think like a couple, and I felt a little bit like, well, what's that? What's that about? That's an obscure kind of thing to experience. And then Kimberly said, when you go into other scenarios, like a daydream, it's actually another reality. I was like, oh my gosh, I thought that was some really good news for me. But one of the things that having had these experiences through, several past life regressions, as well as I've been doing, I'm a big Kundalini yoga person, and I've been attending gong baths for many, many years. And the progression of going to those gong baths is regularly I do experience, I see my past lives and I see them in detail. And it's really interesting because I've become more interactive. So I can stop and visit for a while, or I can let them go by and see as many as I want. And that's kind of a cool thing. But what I wanted to say about it is it's given me a perspective on my now reality. And that perspective is that I'm taking everything way too seriously, that this lifetime is the blink of an eye, that it's I remember, and I hear it around people that let's just say people that are living in duality. And I would say mainstream, most people, when somebody dies, what's the reaction? Oh, that's so sad. And we have Isabelle and I have a common very, very good friend who just lost someone, and we know it's not sad. It's not sad. It's like we can actually talk to that person and, think about that person with great love. And I don't really feel sad because I know that this is just how it is. And like when Max was talking about Chris Turk, I went online and I saw a picture of him. And it was like, wow, he only lived, 22 years or 21 years or 20 years, whatever it was. And like the normal mainstream thought the go-to thought would be, how sad. But then Max came along, right? And that we are eternal beings. So that's a really important thing to remember. And I think it gives us a lot of perspective, because what I hear from like the most people that are out there, I'm going to say going that drudging along on that road, trying to get success or whatever it is that is going to help them to feel worthy. They feel like they have to do it all in this lifetime. And so that gives us a little bit of a break. We can like relax our shoulders a little bit. It's like, I remember when I first started going on the ascension journey, I mean, I'd been like law of attraction for a long, long, long time, but really when I really got into the teachings of Joshua and I really understood, about practicing neutrality, about processing my limiting beliefs, about moving in and clearing all that shadowy stuff that Kimberly was talking about so that I could feel freer, so that I could feel more love, which is freedom. Yeah, it just opened everything up for me. But I would hear like people say, "Oh my God, Nikki, you need to do this and do that. You need to get out there." And me too, fear of public speaking, right? And I attribute it to a memory from when I was a little kid in this lifetime, but it probably goes way back. Now, that is one thing that I would say I saw through the lifetimes that Isabelle has channeled, like worked with me on, is there are running themes through my lifetime. So one of the running themes, of course, unworthiness. As Roxanne would say, we all have PhDs in unworthiness, right? And but my unworthiness has manifested throughout many, many, many lifetimes as being a victim and the man having the power. So most of my lifetimes that I've seen I'm a woman. There was one lifetime where I was extremely powerful as an Egyptian like warrior, right? And I was very powerful then, and I believe that the crux of this, the whole result of knowing and being exposed to that lifetime was I was like killing for my father and stuff, and I like somehow established a belief that being powerful could be dangerous. So I think that affected many lifetimes after that of not stepping into my power. And that's super interesting to see. But what's really interesting, what Kimberly was talking about with the soul contracts, was that I feel like in this particular lifetime, I have absolutely purged, cleared for myself, and also for the collective conscious. In a way, it's been like lots of work, lots of soul work. That's why I'm with Isabelle, we had this great ascension integration class where we were teaching about really moving into the shadow. So I do feel like I've come out of it, because I came into this life being a victim, and I am no longer the victim. It doesn't mean I don't sometimes have contrast or resistance, but when you do the work, the results are great. The pain, when I see people that are in intense emotional pain, I don't feel sorry for them. I don't feel sad for them. I don't worry about them. I think, yay, because the more intense the pain, then that means they're birthing desires for something else. And if they have the courage, and if it is chosen in this lifetime, they will expand, they will get on the other side of that, and they will live in more freedom. So it's been really interesting for me, especially in certain relationships, like my relationship with my husband and other people. One of my lifetimes with my husband, it was in Europe. I think it was in the 18th century, and I was taking care of him, working 2 jobs because he was handicapped, but he didn't really love me. That's what, this was in my Akashic records, and I had somebody facilitating this information. And it was funny because in this lifetime with my husband, I've felt like the power's been reversed a little bit. Like I've just felt like in a way it wasn't quite balanced, and it was just so interesting to think, oh, we just played. I knew it, but then it was like really integrated when I saw these lives. They're like, oh my gosh, we're all just playing these roles. And I'm doing my role perfectly. I don't have to be different. I'm doing it exactly how I'm supposed to do it. And when I am triggered by my sister or somebody else, my son, when I go into fear, like, oh my God, this is really painful. I hate this. And at the same time, there's information here. So what's the information? Okay, I'm being triggered because I see it as wrong. Why do I see it as wrong? Because I have a rational fear that something bad's going to happen to my son, or that, my sister should recycle, or some crazy story. There's always something like that, but it's always an opportunity for me to clear beliefs that no longer serve me and move into more freedom. So whether you've experienced a past life, um, or you haven't, it doesn't have any great meaning in the world. But this is sort of the fun part of the ascension process, at least for me. It's like, oh, how cool, and when Izzy and I were together, I think it's actually more fun now when you regress me. We like to just talk to my higher self a lot, right? It's sort of like interesting to see the themes that have run through these lives. It's interesting to see the lives, the soul family that I've been playing around with, and to see them when I've regressed my own, not on purpose, but I do matrix re-imprinting. And so this is a form of energy work where we go in and talk to usually the younger versions of you, and we sort of pinpoint where the trauma was. But a few times when I've said, when I've led a client along the timeline, I say things like to an earlier time, perhaps even before this, and I've the clients have gone actually back to past lives, and it's really interesting because one of the questions I always ask is, why did you show up? What is it that you have to say to this present version of you, if we're saying that there's time? And it's always really interesting because that client can always draw upon the strength of the wisdom of that earlier other version of her or him. So, I don't think it's really interesting for me to go into all the particulars of the lives I've experienced. I hope that I've been able to share the wisdom, and the strength, the realizations that I've had through the work that I've done with all of these light workers, in particular, my lovely Isabelle. Thank you so much.
Nikki, thank you. And one of the things that I loved how you pointed out was themes. You noticed a theme, and how you can pull when you do matrix re-imprinting, how you can help pull that aspect of that life forward. So this is why I think Chris is working with Max. I think Kimberly, you were shown your ancient lives so that you could pull forth that knowing and understanding in this life. I think I was shown Atlantis many of times, so that so when the inspiration came to create a tarot deck for children, and when I uncovered there is no such thing right now in this physical reality, I started to laugh, because in Atlantis, we taught our babies right away. And so when that inspiration came to me, I was like, okay, it makes sense. It's something I would have done in that life in Atlantis. So I hope this helps everyone. Max, is there a question from our audience?
Yes. Kathleen is asking, so when Max connected with to Chris, was it really his higher self since at that frequency? Well, I you see, it's how Nikki, before you said that you've checked and you've seen he died at 21, 22, and said one could say, oh, sad, and yes, but Isabelle, right? We were talking about that, and I said yes, that is the version of Chris I choose, or we choose, to connect with. Chris died in Vietnam. Yes, that version I'm connecting with. So there isn't just one version of Chris, there are many versions of Chris. So when we connect with our other life, other personality, other species, whatever, you can connect with different versions of them, or also what we will say a higher version, which is closer with our higher self. It depends. It's always a question in the moment with whom or which version we connect. It's never the same. It doesn't have to, it's not always the same one, right? Because the frequencies changes, the energy changes, so the moment changes. So we are simply, it depends from the moment. It's really right like that, because one moment I can maybe connect with a echo of Chris in Vietnam, the other moment I can connect with the higher version of Chris, which will be a more global version, in a different moment of vibration, of energy, of being.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in. So Kathleen, the team is saying it's like a different song. So you have a singer, but the singer sings many different songs. And so you're tuning in to a version of a song, and then the singer sings another version of the song. It's all the same energy of your inner being and in your energy field, but you can tap into a different level of consciousness or a different tune.
Yeah. And let me just add something as well, just with my experience with the higher self readings that I do. So basically the information that they've given me is that we have between 7 and 8 higher self aspects. So basically these are aspects of beings, and it's kind of like the aspects of them that creates like a whole, right? But we also have thousands upon thousands, if not more, past lives. So there is a kind of a difference here. And by me doing the higher self readings, basically, even though some people have had, their higher self aspects has had life on Earth, like my life as Isabelle, she's one of my higher self aspects who lived in Atlantis, right? And I'm aware of 5 of my higher self aspects currently. I've still got more to explore, right? But we have much more, what we call as past lives. So what that means is that it doesn't really matter if there are really a higher self aspect or past life, because they're here to teach us. Just with the higher self aspects, and like, for instance, like, I don't know if you've watched on my YouTube channel, I actually did a higher self reading with Isabelle, and one of her higher self aspects is Goddess Isis. And basically because I channel Isis all the time, but when I trans-channeled Isabelle's higher self aspect as Goddess Isis, it was different, right? Because our higher self aspects, even though beings are not, how do I say this? They're limitless beings. They're also multidimensional. So the aspect of Isabelle that's Goddess Isis is a little bit different, right? Because all beings are multidimensional. And I don't know if you felt that, Isabelle, but for me, channeling your higher self aspect, it was different to how I usually channel Goddess Isis. The energy is slightly different, because it's like taking one aspect of that being. It might not be, for instance, I could say the totality of that being, but there's no totality in anything, right? Because all energy is limitless, right? But let's just say certain being kind of teaches X, Y, and Z, right? But maybe this higher self aspect only is aligned to the aspect of X, not X, Y, and Z. So it's ingrained, and you have other higher self aspects, and this kind of forms your personality, and also relates to your soul purpose here, right? And it's very interesting, because I'm aware of, like I said, several of my higher self aspects, and when I've gone through the integration process, I really feel my personality has shifted as well. another one of my higher self aspects is Ishtar, goddess Ishtar. And she's fiery. And when I integrated her, I was like, whoa, she's so foreign to how I usually am, right? Because I used to be kind of this people pleaser and like, oh, no confrontation and ooh, like, and when I started to integrate her, I was like this fire, and I was like unapologetically saying things that it to people, not aggressive, just assertive, but because I was so used to being sometimes more passive, the assertiveness, that fire and that passion seemed to be a bit like jarring, like whoa. And of course took time to integrate that. But it just shows that, it actually forms your personality. So end of the story, I guess, you would know if it's a higher self aspect or just another life, because they usually are elevated states of consciousness. So they would have much awareness of who they are, about, how the universe works. So, for instance, a lot of people that have had high self readings, they were shamans, right? They were people who were able to tap into the rhythms of Gaia, or were able to communicate with the galactic beings, or, there were elevated positions of society. Or if not, I've even had a hybrid, yes, as a higher self aspect. So that also happens. But end of the day, it kind of doesn't matter. It's just about tuning into the wisdom that comes through. So they're all here to teach us, whether it's to do with soul purpose, because higher self aspects usually relate to soul purpose. So when I've done higher self readings, they talk about reasons why you're here in relations to your specific mission. So that's also a kind of a way to know if it's a higher self aspect or past life. So past lives are very much, or parallel lives, is really more for our soul contracts, right? Whereas higher self really relates to purpose, missions here, if that makes sense. So it's kind of more of a, of course, they do come with soul, soul contracts, or we call it soul contracts, but it also relates to that as well. Anyway, yeah.
So Kathleen asked, she had sessions with me, actually, and she noticed that she was always alone in those lives. So, Kathleen, you have a theme going on, because you were alone in many of those lives, and you're wondering why, right? And so that is the inner work, right, Kimberly? Like if you see, like you were afraid of persecution, and then you had a fear of speaking. But in your lives, so Kimberly has seen many lives as a teacher. So Kimberly didn't ask, well, why am I a teacher? Although we did get the understanding that she was created with the purpose to teach oneness in the universe. But did you ever question that?
Well, yeah, well, of course, because it all relates to our how we perceive our sense of worth, and our self-love. So, of course, without Lakeshma telling me who I was, without seeing my other lives and actually beings that are associated with those other lives coming to me and telling me who I am, and even in other lives, it kind of really helped to raise my level of self-worth. Because, yeah, at the time I was like, who am I to be this grand teacher? Like, it kind of seemed like when they were telling me who I was, it kind of seemed a bit like, whoa, a bit like, hang on. But that's because of my level of self-worth. Why? I thought, I'm not worthy of this. Like, I'm just this average, like, you know what I mean? I'm just like this not kind of normal person. Like, I don't know, like, you know what I mean? Because I judge my reality, I judge my surroundings, I judge everything. Like, how can be a teacher when this has been manifested in my life and the presentations in my reality, right? And I kind of had to process that. That's the shadow work. I really had to work on my perception of self-love and self-worth. And because it related to my specific contracts, they really came to me to teach me this and show me this is who you are. Don't be afraid of your own power. And don't be, because I really was afraid of, even though I couldn't be killed in this life, I was really afraid of social persecution. And it was so real to me. And even though in my mind, intellectually, I know this is such an irrational fear, it's so real for me because, I was killed for it. So it's just so interesting. Even if you have the awareness, you still have to process it. Like, just because we know of a lot of this information doesn't mean we bypass out, doing the inner work. We all have to do the inner work. All of us have to do it.
Right. So Kathleen is perceiving her lives alone as wrong.
Yeah. And you know what I would also say, it's sort of like what I shared about my lives. Like, in all of these lifetimes, I was in relationships with men where they didn't, let's just say they didn't, they had the power. I gave away my power. I felt powerless. There was probably, emotional abuse, that sort of thing. And that kept repeating, because that's how the law of attraction works, And, people talk about this, and this is one perspective, and I don't even know how I feel about it, but I feel like if like Kimberly said, and I agreed for myself in this lifetime, I feel like I've completed that contract, because I've stepped into my power. I'm stepping into it now. I'm no longer seeing myself as less than others. I see myself as equal to everyone else. And I have more confidence, and I love myself so much more. And I don't think that I did that in any of those other lives. So I believe we keep being presented with similar scenarios until we've birthed enough desire that we make the change. And also, we always choose which life we will awaken in. And if I'm not mistaken, Kathleen has awakened in this lifetime. So I would, my first go-to thing would be, what do you want? And then do the work to look at, one of those good questions is, what is stopping me from what I want? What is it? And look at it, because you're not a victim. This is the thing about being on this ascension journey, is we're realizing, it's about being powerful, but it's also about caring about how we feel. It's about processing our fears. We no longer have to live in fear, and that's the work,
That's wonderful. And also, just to add, Kathleen, about being alone, does that trigger you in this lifetime? I'm curious. If that's a theme in your other lives, then the theme might have been carried through this lifetime, right? So was there a time, or are you still experiencing, fear of being around crowds or fear of being alone? So it could be either or, right? So yeah, maybe really sit with that theme and look at your beliefs and see if that still triggers you. So it's interesting, because if it's still there, it means it's still for you, right? And whenever we have a soul contract, which are pre-birth intentions, it's for us in every way. Like, if I didn't have the soul contract, if I wasn't persecuted in that life, I wouldn't birth this soul contract. If I didn't have this soul contract on processing the fear of persecution and pushing past it and doing it anyway, I wouldn't have. It basically creates a ripple effect. When you resolve a soul contract, the level of energy that is activated, it's so empowering. It just creates a ripple effect, not just within you, but all of the collective and all your lives. It's like you go through another stage of awakening, and you really activate your divine blueprint. So no matter how challenging it is, I mean, for goodness sake, I had awareness, I knew all this wisdom, I knew all the techniques. Yeah, I still had fear of social persecution. It's like, come on, guys. And even for me, it was so strong. And I just had to continuously, over years, mind you, it doesn't happen like, oh yeah, it's my soul contract, and I'm just going to push past the fear the next day and that's it. No, I had to continuously work on it, continuously put myself out there. When the universe presented me the opportunity to teach publicly, whether it was a podcast, whatever it was, yes, it would trigger me, and I would have to process, push past the fear, doing interviews with random people I don't know. They want to interview me, and yes, the fear comes up. What if they're going to say this, and they're going to betray me? This doesn't matter. I had to process it, and it's like you have to step in the unknown, and I had to keep putting myself out there. So now it's got to the stage, then yes, I still, in some certain projects, I still might have that fear, right? But it's I've worked on it so much now that it's just like the fear is much less, right? So it's I'm able to manage that, and I'm actually the process of, hang on, this is an opportunity, this is the universe showing me to go in this direction. So yeah, I'm going to jump in. but it doesn't happen overnight. So if you have a soul contract and it's very challenging, like, I don't know, Kathleen, if you're still experiencing this contract now, but those of other people watching this, if you have that still, it's okay. It's okay if you have this. It's just a lesson, right? And there's no end destination. Like, we might think, okay, we have to resolve this soul contract, but no, we don't. Like, and it's no race here. So it's, as you do this journey, it's about firstly being kind in yourself, compassionate with your own self. Because I know many light workers out there, they are the biggest critics are themselves, like they judge their journey, they judge their progress. It's like, why can't I get here already? Why can't I resolve this limiting belief already? There's no race here. But to release the resistance to exploring these things, we have to kind of surrender to it, and we have to be compassionate with ourselves, right? Love our journey, accept where you are. There is no race. Where I am today is because of my soul contracts, because of my specific life purposes here. So, for instance, you can't compare your journey with my journey. I can't compare my journey with another person's journey, because everyone's journey is unique. So that's something that I learned very early on as well, is to let go of the comparison, because you just don't know other people's soul contracts. You just don't know their soul mission here. Yes, I started to remember all these lives as information, what you might think earlier on, I guess, but that's because of who I was supposed to be in this life, because I'm meant to be a teacher in this life. So I was like doing a lot of all this stuff in a very intense way. And, I had situations in my life. Yes, I had themes in my life that caused, in human terms, trauma. But it was part of my soul contract too, to allow me to go inward. So everything is perfect. So if you have this theme, or whatever theme you're exploring in other lives, most likely it's in this life too, but maybe it's in a different form. Just have a look at that. And look, you don't even have to know the details, to be honest. If you are triggered with fear and there's a theme, that's your soul contract. If you see a theme in your human life and there's a particular trigger, then you know that relates to your soul contracts, your pre-birth intention. So yes, if you're guided to go back and to explore that life, yes, but you don't necessarily have to either. You can work on it also in the present now, but it asks you to surrender to it, to be non-resistant to it, bring it into the heart and love it. Because if you're in fear, right, that's just a dimension of you that is in the absence of the remembrance of love. It's an aspect of you that needs love. So you just and it might be hard to love a fear. I understand that. But if you can practice acceptance, that's equivalent to unconditional love. Just being acceptance of it, and then you can increase that even more with the frequency and be, grateful for it, because it's showing you a soul lesson here. It's giving you an opportunity to expand. So you can be grateful for that soul lesson, even though the lesson itself is very challenging. But like I said, it doesn't happen overnight. So be gentle on yourself, because we criticize ourselves the most. And I know, because I was one of these people. So I've learned over the years to be more gentle on myself too, because, because we're all in this journey. There is no end time. It's a journey. So we expand through the journey, not because of the end result here. So it's just embracing all aspects of our life, embracing our fears. They're just teachers, and just surrendering to your reality, because your reality is for you in every way.
Right. So whether she resolves this, or really, it's not a question of resolving. It's a question of understanding. It's a question of deeper understanding of who she is, of why there's this theme, why, I agree with you, Kimberly. You don't have to go into those past lives, but look at this life. Why have you accepted? Were you giving away your power? Like Nikki said, in her relationships in the other lives, she always gave away her power to the man, and she did soul work around that. It's all about expansion and greater understanding. And that's what I just wanted to underline. Max, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I just had this thing popping in my head. The question is the loneliness, and I had, what about your team? I have this thing in literature with Jane Austen, and this the writing, when you have the absence of something, that something is just shouting at you. And then the question is, are you listening? Are you able to perceive that shout? That's all.
Thank you. All right, actually, we're going to wrap it up.
Hey, you know what? I do want to say one thing, Izzy.
Okay.
He's absolutely right. And usually our bodies talk to us. So are you listening? Because if we're not listening, if we're not purposefully thinking and processing, our monkey mind goes to town. And if we don't listen, it gets louder and louder, and it usually goes into our bodies. So that's always a good indicator. Your monkey mind can fool you, but your body never will. So are you listening to your body?
Oh, that's brilliant. All right, so listen, my listeners out there, you can listen to this on YouTube, but there's a transcript option. So you might want to read the words. Kimberly said like a chock full of things, Max, Nikki, myself, and maybe reading it, you can highlight a couple of sentences and things like that, because I am passionate around your ascension. It's what you believe. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much. Who is hosting next?
I don't know.
Max? Nikki?
Back to you on that.
I can't, because it's the night before I'm going back to France.
Okay.
It's going to be too much.
All right, so it's either you or Kimberly or Max.
It should be Kimberly.
I hosted last time.
All right,
It's you, Max.
It's me? Okay, all right.
You.
I'll do the
All right.
one when I get back. I'll do the one after Max.
Awesome. Well, I hope you enjoyed this format. We were changing it up a little bit. And I love you all tremendously. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye, everybody. Thank you, Isabelle.
Thank you, bye.